Hello there, loyal Buzzkillers. Today's show is a Man Crush Monday, and it's publicly available. But please go to ProfessorBuzzkill.com and click on the Support the Show Patreon button to continue receiving Man Crush Monday and Woman Crush Wednesday episodes. They're now only available to members of the Duchy of Buzzkill, but for as little as $1 a month, you can take your place in Buzzkill Society and continue to receive these special shows. There are more Buzzkill benefits at the higher Patreon levels, so again, go to ProfessorBuzzkill.com and click on Support the Show. Thank you very much.
It's a Man Crush Monday. Join Professor Buzzkill as he crushes on men from history who deserve more fame and glory.
Yes, it's the professor here on a Man Crush Monday. There are a lot of very tall statues all over the world. Organizations, countries, and governments set up statues to heroes of all kinds, sometimes real, sometimes spiritual, sometimes allegorical. The Statue of Liberty is certainly very tall, 46 meters and 151 feet. And is an allegorical figure of liberty, the central idea of the American nation. But it's only the, wait for it, 48th tallest statue in the world, and is dwarfed by the Motherland Calls in Volgograd in Russia, which is 85 meters and 279 feet tall. That's a gigantic, beautiful, stirring statue of a woman warrior holding aloft a massive sword, calling Russians to defend and protect their people and their culture, which is probably their most deeply felt ideal. But the Motherland Calls is only the 9th tallest statue in the world. The rest of the top 10 statues are to gods, mostly Buddhas, and in Japan and Thailand and Myanmar and China, except for one. Completed in 2018, the Statue of Unity in Gujarat in Western India is the tallest in the world by a long stretch. It's 182 meters. That's 597 feet tall. 136 meters, 446 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty, and 51 meters, 177 feet taller than the Spring Temple Buddha statue in Henan province in China, the second tallest statue in the world. And the statue is only allegorical and symbolic in terms of its title. It's not a statue to a god. It's a statue to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, one of the Republic of India's founding fathers, and the person perhaps most responsible for forging India into a unitary state during the very difficult and tumultuous struggle for freedom and independence in the early and mid-20th century. He was born in Gujarat in 1875, and Vallabhbhai Patel showed his intelligence very early. He moved quickly and easily through his early schooling and went to England in 1910 to earn his law degree at the Middle Temple, which he earned in 1913. His law practice in Gujarat was impressive after he got back to India, and he became involved in local Gujarati politics while he was still a young lawyer. Now, ordinarily, this would have led to an important, a prestigious civil service job in the British government in India, but Patel refused those jobs when they were offered to him. From an early age, he opposed British rule over India and did not wish to participate in it. Now, when the Indian independence movement started going, Patel was initially dismissive of Mahatma Gandhi's philosophical approach to Indian independence, as Patel thought it was unrealistic and anti-modern. Here's a quote from Patel. "Gandhi would ask you if you know how to sift pebbles from wheat, and that is supposed to bring independence." He said this to a colleague in early 1917. But he changed his mind substantially when he met Gandhi in October of that year, and they discussed India's future. He then joined Gandhi and followed the Satyagraha, that's the nonviolent protest wing of the Indian independence movement. Patel organized and led tax revolts and protests for the rest of the 19-teens and 1920s, earning him the honorific title Sardar, which is leader. During the 1930s, he was a central figure in the Indian National Congress Party, usually agreeing with Gandhi and disagreeing with Jawaharlal Nehru over the question of how independent India would be, whether in essence it would become a dominion in the British Empire like Canada or a fully independent republic. Gandhi and Patel would have settled for dominion status, whereas Nehru and other Indian nationalists insisted on full independence, even though that was much more difficult to achieve. And that's a whole huge series of podcasts in itself, the whole movement and disagreement in the Indian nationalist movement in that period. Patel was imprisoned several times in the 1930s and 40s, and perhaps most famously, he was jailed in 1930 for helping to lead the famous Salt Satyagraha, which was a march to the sea to collect salt rather than pay for it through the British-controlled markets. And, as I said and implied, other political jailings followed, even during the Second World War. Now, Sardar Patel is most famous for his work for Indian unity in the late 1940s, as the independence movement changed from being an aspiration to becoming a reality. Unity, Indian nationalists believe, could end what was known as communal violence, that is, violence between different religious and ethnic groups within India. And this new unity, could create a great nation. Patel was the key figure in getting several hesitant Indian princely states to agree to join a united India in the tense period between 1947 and 1949. Now, this involved a tremendous degree of sensitive negotiation with those princely states. And all the while Patel was doing this provincial negotiation, he had to keep the somewhat divided Indian National Congress leaders from throwing up their hands and allowing for, essentially, a politically fractured South Asia. These two things going on at the same time, while sometimes in conflict with each other. His diligence and his patience and his lack of, losing his temper over all this earned him the nickname the Iron Man of India. Now, he succeeded at this arduous task. Well, he was India's first deputy prime minister and minister for home affairs, again, from 1947 until December 1950. You see, he did all this work, all this unity work, without having the benefit or the personal fame and satisfaction of serving as prime minister, an office that, frankly, many contemporary Indian politicians and subsequent political historians thought that he deserved. And it's quite possible, indeed likely, that the stress caused by all this work led to a relatively rapid decline in his health and a massive heart attack that killed him at the end of 1950. As you might imagine, I'd say the life and career of Sardar Patel is well worth studying in its own right, but learning about him, and especially the central role he played in gaining Indian independence and forging the Indian state, also gives us an opportunity to question and test the validity of what I sometimes call the great individual theory of history, often and usually in the past referred to as the great man theory of history. If you hadn't grown up in India and hadn't studied Indian history, you might think that if I told you the tallest statue in the world was being built in 2018 and that it was going to represent an Indian independence leader, that it would be Gandhi. It must be Gandhi. He's the great towering figure of modern Indian history. But, this is just as when asked about the British in World War II, the first person most people think of is Churchill. But just as Churchill didn't, quote, save Western civilization on his own, as he's very frequently praised as doing. Gandhi did not and could not alone bring about the independence of India, as important as he was and as iconic a figure as he was. There were dozens of national, thousands of local Indian leaders in that movement. Each one's contribution was essential to India's ultimate independence. We need, in my view, to more greatly appreciate the wide range of people and the great numbers of people who make any major historical event or development happen. Now, given how relatively unselfish Sardar Patel was in relegating his personal political pride to the greater goal of Indian self-determination, he might be surprised, and indeed maybe even troubled, to see himself represented by the tallest statue in the world. But he might also be somewhat consoled by the fact that the statue is not named after him individually, but is named after a great aspiration for his people. It's called the Statue of Unity, which was the work of his life. And that's why he's the subject of today's Man Crush Monday. Talk to you next time.